Shalom, welcome to the Jewish Task Force, JTF. I'm Chaim Ben Pesach, and we have another program with the great David Ben Moshe. This will be a very important program for America and for Israel because we're going to be talking about how self-hating Jews are leading the destructive campaign against Israel. How the enemies of Israel and America, the most effective enemies, are the self-hating Jews. They're the ones that are causing the most problems for Israel, and that has been true all along. And we're going to, it says in the Bible, your destroyers shall come from within, and we can see that certainly with the Jewish people. So we're going to be explaining that. We're going to giving you some stunning examples. So this is an important program, and of course, you know that David always has very important and interesting information to bring us as well. But we're going to start off by saying that this program is dedicated to Refuah Shlema, complete recovery, for Mark Ben Sarah, Sharon Mitman, Shlomo Ben Sarah, Dorit Bat Sarah, Ruven Ben Shoshana, and Ruth Bat Sarah. And to Ilui Neshamot, elevating of the souls, for Malka Bat Meir, Allegra Bat Shlomo, Daniel Nankin, Victor Chazdai, Pesach Zeb Ben Dov, Lunita Adler, Shifra Hoffman, Ruven Hoffman, Barry Hoffman, Arab Mir Kahana, Arab Binyamin Kahana, Tzipora Fegi Bat Liba, Yosef Ben Meir, Robert Mittman, Dennis Shore, Helen Friedman, and Charles Zolat. Well, let's start off by speaking about something that happened when the senile Joe Biden gave his so-called State of the Union speech, which is all full of lies. Everything he said was a lie. The Democrats are all pathological liars. But anyway, when he gave his speech talking about all the wonderful things they're doing to destroy America, because everything they're doing is to destroy America. Open borders, massive crime, everything they're doing will bring America down, God forbid. Everything they're doing. Now, after he gave that speech, he walked in the audience. He walks among the people in Congress, in the chamber there, in the House chamber there. And he was stopped by a senator who said to him, "You have to stop Netanyahu. You have to stop what Israel is doing and have to stop Netanyahu and stop these Israelis from massacring the Palestinians." Of course, there are no Palestinians. There's no such thing. There never was a Palestinian people in history at any time. Even the term Palestine was invented by the Roman Emperor Hadrian, and it was named after the ancient Philistines, who had nothing to do with the land of Israel, who themselves were invaders in the land of Israel. But anyway, there is no Palestinian people. They're Arabs, and they're part of a gigantic Arab nation of 500 million Arabs with 22 Arab countries. And they want now the 23rd country in place of the one tiny little Jewish state. But anyway, this evil, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel senator stopped Biden and really was telling him, you have to stop Netanyahu, and was pressuring Biden. And Biden agreed with him. Biden said, "Oh, yes, that Netanyahu. Yes, and he was agreeing with him that he has to pressure Netanyahu and he has to stop Netanyahu. And Netanyahu's crossing the red lines, and the two of them having a conversation. They were knocking Israel and attacking Israel. Now, I'm not a defender of Netanyahu. Netanyahu is a wimp. He's pathetic. He's a traitor. He's not doing 1% of what Israel should be doing to its enemies, and they're complaining even about that. But anyway, they're knocking Israel, attacking Israel, these two anti-Semites, the senator and Joe Biden. And who is the senator? Probably an Arab, right? Probably a Muslim or an Arab or some other Jew hater, some other vicious Jew hater. No. Surely enough, the senator is Michael Bennet of Colorado, the self-hating Jew Michael Bennet of Colorado. The same Michael Bennet who pretended all these years that he wasn't Jewish. He tried to hide his Jewish background. He was ashamed of his Jewish background and tried to hide it, like John Kerry, whose father's name was Cohen, and all of these other Jews that are always in hiding. They're afraid and ashamed of people discovering that they're part of the Jew. Imagine to be ashamed to be part of the Jewish people. I mean, where have you ever had a people who has achieved such heights of greatness, such a tiny people? And God says in the Bible that he chose this people to be a light unto the nations and a holy nation, nation of priests. And these sick cockroaches of Semitic persuasion are ashamed to be Jewish? Ashamed of that heritage? Anyway, Michael Bennett, the self-hating Jew, is the one that pressured. And then after that, there was a petition and letters signed demanding that he crack down on, and he attacked the Jewish settlers. The Hilltop Youth he's referring to. Those Jewish settlers, what they're doing is terrible. And he attacked the Hilltop, and the Hilltop Youth. Later there was a letter and a petition sent to Biden from senators and members of Congress. And who led the petition to stop the murderous policies of Israel has murderous policies. Can you imagine? The Arab Muslim Nazis have murdered millions of their fellow Muslims, slaughtered them with poison gas and mustard gas, burned them alive. Men, women, and children, millions have been murdered. 2 million in the Iraq-Iran war, 1 million in the Syrian civil war, 500,000 in Lebanon. This is what they do to each other. Can you imagine what they would do to the hated infidels? And little Israel fighting against these psychotic, evil, sadistic, cruel, monstrous mass murderers. Little Israel trying to survive in a sea of evil is called, according to the letter and the petition sent to Biden, Israel is murderous. Can you imagine this? And who, of course, aside from Michael Bennett, who was circulating the letter? Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders. You know Bernie Sanders. He was from Flatbush in Brooklyn. Hideous. Just hideous. I love these self-hating Jewish cowards who talk like this, and I'm in charge of the Upper West Side chapter of Black Lives Matter. Hideous, hideous people, always supporting their enemies, always supporting the most evil causes. And they're the ones who say that we, the Kahanis Jews, cause anti-Semitism. We cause anti-Semitism? We would end foreign aid. I think most Americans would like that. We would end foreign aid. We would end American involvement in the Middle East, which is completely unnecessary and harmful to America and harmful to Israel. We would have America not only support Israel and be blessed and not support Israel with money. We don't want money. We don't want anything for America. We just want America to stay out and let Israel do what Israel has to do. That's all we want. And the prayers. We want the prayers of righteous Gentiles. That's all we'd ask for. That causes anti-Semitism? Instead of these AIPAC Jews who, we need more billions because without America we can't survive. 5 minutes we can't survive. The so-called foreign aid to Israel hurts Israel. Hurts Israel. Always did, always will.
Because it makes you a slave to the lender who is now your master.
And not just, and also because the Jews have a special mission in this world, have a special destiny. Am levadad yishkonu v'goyim lo yitchashav. Lo, this is a nation that shall dwell alone and not be reckoned among the nations. When Israel is alone, it's a blessing, because then God shows the world that he is giving Israel these miraculous victories. If not, if you're getting foreign aid, then people say, well, it's because you got foreign aid, which is, of course, nonsense, but still. When Israel's alone and wins these miraculous victories, then it's a kiddush Hashem, it's a sanctification of God's name. By the way, Michael Bennett's mother was a Holocaust survivor. You imagine that she's a Holocaust survivor. It's just unbelievable. She survived the Holocaust, and she produced this bacteria. The son is like bacteria, like human bacteria. I mean, his father, Michael Bennett's father, by the way, look at his whole family, just what a great history. His grandfather worked for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who murdered 6 million Jews during the Holocaust. Roosevelt could have stopped the Holocaust at any time by bombing the rail lines, by bombing the concentration camps, by showing the German Nazis they're not going to get away with this. That would have stopped the German Nazis always tested. They always tested the world and tested before they did things like this. And Kristallnacht, when they attacked the Jews on Kristallnacht, that was a test. If Roosevelt had taken firm action, and Roosevelt and Churchill, the Americans and the British, had taken action to stop the Holocaust, they could have stopped it immediately. 6 million Jews would not have been murdered. Roosevelt and Churchill also kept the Jews. Roosevelt supported Churchill when he kept the Jews out of Israel. The 6 million Jews wanted to escape to Israel. They closed the doors and sunk ships of Jews trying to escape Auschwitz. The British bombed the ships and sunk the ships with Jewish men, women, and children. And the same British today condemn Israel. Imagine Jews trying to escape the Holocaust and closing the doors to the land of Israel to them. Can you imagine the evil of these people? And that was supported by Roosevelt and by Churchill. And
imagine all the illegals coming in by the millions, but just 500-600 on the St. Louis, a ship, who wanted to come to America with all the Jews, the 500-600 Jews, and Roosevelt wouldn't even let one in.
And Roosevelt deliberately did everything he could to enable the Germans to carry out the Holocaust, because his policy was to allow the Germans and encourage the Germans to murder as many Jews as possible, and the Germans understood that very clearly. The only roads in Europe, in Germany, that were not bombed by the Allies, every other road was bombed by the Allies and destroyed by the Allies. The only roads in Germany that were not bombed by the Allies during World War II were the roads leading to the death camps. That the Americans and the British deliberately wouldn't touch.
And rail lines. They wouldn't bomb the trains. Right. And a B-17, by mistaken target, dropped bombs in one of the camps, and that crew caught hell for doing that.
Michael Bennett's grandfather worked for Roosevelt. Like so many Jews. By the way, Roosevelt's advisors were all Jews. His Secretary of the Treasury was Morgenthau. And his grandfather, Michael Bennett's grandfather, was one of the people who worked for the Nazi Jew hater Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And that was his grandfather working for FDR. And then his father worked for another president, Jimmy Carter, the Nazi peanut farmer. Jimmy Carter, that vicious anti-Semite, who did everything he could to hurt Israel and destroy Israel. And even after his presidency, always working against Israel, always supporting all of Israel's enemies, always openly attacking Israel in a way that he was so violently anti-Israel, even leftist Jews sometimes accused him of anti-Semitism. And that was his father. So his grandfather worked for FDR. His father worked for Jimmy Carter. Now he's a senator who pretends that he isn't Jewish. And the first thing he does is tell Biden to do everything he can to destroy Israel. And the AIPAC Jews say, we must support them. And by the way, when Bennett runs for re-election, though, suddenly he discovers he's Jewish, because he runs to all the Jewish donors and says, you have to support you. Don't you want a Jewish senator? Don't you want to have to help a Jew? You don't want to elect a Jew to the United States Senate?
Oh.
He runs and he gets millions of dollars from Jews, from mentally retarded Jews. Millions of dollars so that he can get re-elected, because he's a fellow Jew. We'll have a fellow Jew in the Senate. And he's very progressive. We want progressives. We must have progressives, because they do so much good in the world. Another example. A letter was distributed against the Jews in Judea and Samaria, specifically the Hilltop Youth and the Jews in Judea and Samaria, and was sent to pressure Biden and the Biden administration to crack down on the Jews in Judea and Samaria, because they know that if the Hilltop Youth are not there and they crack down on the Jews in Judea and Samaria, then there'll be a Palestinian terrorist state. And that's national suicide for Israel. And these self-hating Jews, they can't wait. They can't wait, because they're so embarrassed. They're ashamed that there's a state, a Jewish state, where Jews fight in the army and win six-day wars and are heroes. They think that being a wimp and a coward and a spineless worm, that's the way to go. That's what the world will admire you for. When Jews are brave, when Jews are strong, when Jews do the right thing, they think, oh, that causes anti-Semitism. Oh, what imbeciles. I mean, they're not only evil, they're stupid. And this letter was circulated. Who was the person who initiated the letter? Congressman Dan Goldman of Brooklyn, who also, by the way, represents Borough Park. where all the Orthodox Jews live, and they vote for him because Dan Goldman. This is a Yid. Oh, Dan Goldman. All the Jews, all the Orthodox Jews and the Hasidic Jews live there. How sick. AIPAC, that organization that they give donations. They announced they were giving tens of millions of dollars to 130 Democrats in the House who are running for re-election. 130 Democrats. That's what they did in the last election. 130 Democrats. There's not a single Democrat who is not anti-Israel, who does not want a Palestinian terrorist state, which is suicide for Israel. Every single Democrat supports the destruction of Israel, supports the Biden, Kamala Harris policies, the policies of that senile beast, Joe Biden, and of the retard, Kamala Harris. That's what she laughs. That cackling retard who is vice president, who will become president if the senile animal is reelected. If you idiots reelect that senile animal, the cackling retard will eventually become president because he can't survive another 5 years. He's already 3/4 dead. And the Jews in AIPAC, an organization, by the way, run by self-hating Jews who supported, who's Obama Jews. Those are the Jews who were the leaders of AIPAC. And all the Orthodox Jews join AIPAC because we have to have foreign aid. What are we going to do if Israel doesn't get foreign aid? Israel can't survive. So stupid. When Israel won the 6-Day War, they didn't get 1 penny from America. They didn't get 1 bullet from America. They didn't get 1 army blanket from America. In fact, from 1948 to 1967, when the 1967 Six-Day War was fought, Israel never got American weapons or aid or assistance. None. None. And yet, Israel defeated the whole Arab world in 6 days and quadrupled in size in the most magnificent, breathtaking miracle since the days of the Bible. Without American aid. You think it's an accident? No, it's not an accident. American aid, after the 6-Day War, America started sending aid to Israel, and that was the beginning of the end. That's when Israel started losing wars. And you know, Jews never get it. They never wake up, they never get it. They always think, even the Jews that are so-called right-wing Jews, they were so-called right-wing Jews, support AIPAC. Or support Netanyahu, that wimp. I mean, they never get it. They think now, you know, they're fooled by Fox. Fox is very pro-Israel, very... The owner of Fox is Rupert Murdoch and News Corp. They also own the Wall Street Nazi Journal. The Wall Street Nazi Journal is as anti-Israel and anti-Semitic as the New York Nazi Times. No difference. They just did another story this past week attacking the Jews in Judea and Samaria, and with the lies that the Jews are engaged in a campaign of violence against the Arabs. Complete lies. The sick, self-hating Jewish government of Israel wouldn't allow the Jews in Judea and Samaria to do that. It's not that they don't want to. They want to retaliate, and retaliate ferociously against the Arab terrorists, mass murderers. They'd like to do that. But they don't do it because the Israeli government won't let them. So these are all just pure lies. The Arabs just make up lies. Just make it all up. Just invent it. And if Jews fight back and resist, in other words, they come and attack your home and attack your community to murder your men, your women and children, murder your babies, and you fight back and fire at them or fight back and defend yourself, violence! You're guilty of violence. And AIPAC and Michael Bennett and Dan Goldman and Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden will condemn you, and the Wall Street Nazi Journal will condemn you. Israel's policy should be very, very simple. It should be the policy that the Hilltop Youth advocate. You know, did you know that I'm a poet, David?
Yes, I've heard some of your poetry.
Yes.
In the old days when we did the TV show.
Well, I'm going to repeat one of my poems. Okay, this is what the Jews of Israel should say to Joe Biden and Michael Bennett and the Wall Street Nazi Journal and the UN and the European Union and the New York Nazi Times and the left-wing news media. Here's what they should say. This is my poem in response to the attacks on Israel. Roses are red, violets are blue, up yours. That's what the Jews should say to them. Now, I'm going to give you a chance here now to do something good, to support the one group of people that I hope they don't give Joe Biden a stroke right now, because then Kamala Harris takes over, and I don't want that cackling hyena, that retarded cackling hyena, to be president, because her self-hating Jewish husband will do terrible harm to Israel and the Jewish people and to America. So I don't want him to get a stroke now. The future, I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything what I think, what I'd like to have happen to him. I don't wish him well, that's for sure. I don't wish him well. I don't wish Kamala Harris well. I don't wish evil people well. I don't. That's me. What can I tell you? That's a crazy Chaim. He doesn't wish evil people well. I don't wish him well. He's scum. Scum. But I don't want him to get a stroke. But if you support the Hilltop Youth, I'll tell you something. You're giving a gift to the evil people that they'll choke on. Because if there's one group of people that all the enemies of Israel and all the evil people don't want you to support, it's the Hilltop Youth. That's one group they don't want you to support. So let's give them a gift that they'll choke on. Help the Hilltop Youth save Israel. It's essential. There are two ways you can support the heroic Hilltop Youth. Online, you can go to our Hebrew main page, hayamin.org, and you just click on the donate button on top. The donate button is in English. The page is in Hebrew, but the donate button is in English on top. It's a big donate button. Click on it. In several minutes, you can very easily and conveniently donate online. hayamin.org and the donate button. If you don't want to do it online, if you want to do it through the regular mail, you send checks and money orders to JTF P.O. Box 650327, Fresh Meadows, New York, 11365. You'll be doing something for yourself more than you'll be doing it for the Hilltop Youth, because their reward, they're already going to get their reward. They are the tzaddikim. They are the righteous people of our generation. If you want to get a reward also, if not in this world, then at least in the next, that's the group you should be supporting, the Hilltop Youth. They are the heroes of our generation, and we've got to defeat the evil, self-hating Jews. That's our mission, Jews and righteous Gentiles. And by the way, the same self-hating Jews, these same self-hating Jews that do such evil and harm to Israel, they do the same thing in America. If you notice, it's the same exact policies. They want open borders. They support Black Lives Matter. They support all the evil causes. They're in Hollywood. They're in the news media. And if you notice, the good Jews in Israel, the good Jews who are doing good for Israel, also advocate good things for America. Did you notice that? Isn't that amazing? It's about time the good Jews got support to give us a shot at not only survival, but at winning against our enemies. You can be part of that. You're getting a chance to be part of that. Hashem, God, is giving you a chance to be part of that. Jews and righteous Gentiles should be part of that, to make this a better world. Sur mera ve'aseh tov. Go away from evil and do good. That's what we're commanded to do. That's in the Bible, a verse from the Bible. Go away from evil and do good. If we do that, then we're fulfilling a very important part of why we're in this world. David?
I have a very political Facebook page, and it's every once in a while a leftist comes, but they can't stand what I write and what others who I have well over 1,000 Facebook friends on there. I don't even know who 99% of them are. Anytime I see somebody that's recommended to me who's a general, I always ask to be a friend. So my Facebook page is very conservative. I'm not talking about just me. I'm talking about everybody. Every once in a while, a leftist comes, and they don't stay long because they can't believe what we're writing. And this is toned down because this is Facebook. If I wrote what I really wanted to write, Facebook would ban me for 30 days. And as soon as I got back on, they'd ban me for another 30 days with the next line I wrote. So I have to tone it down, and still the left can't take it. But every once in a while, amongst the right, it's very few. I think out of all the thousands, there's 3 who are anti-Semites. And they want Israel to stop hitting at the Arabs in Gaza. So I tell them this, okay, you are the prime minister of Israel. There's been 5,000 small attacks in the past couple of years, mostly with rockets, every once in a while, an attack in the streets. We're lucky that the Arabs are the gang that couldn't shoot straight, so most of the rockets fall harmlessly. A lot of them don't explode. Every once in a while, a rocket does explode and injure somebody or even kill somebody. And this goes on daily. Then, and this, once again, this is no exaggeration. We have the proof, 5,000 attacks in the past few years, small attacks. But still an attack. You could be sleeping in your bed and all of a sudden a rocket comes and hits your building and you don't even know what hit you. So all of a sudden on October 7th, there's a massive attack and there's 1,400 casualties. Call it death, wounded, tortured, butchered.
No, 1,400 were murdered. That's just the murdered were 1,400.
Oh, so it's even more.
The 1,400 were murdered, and a couple of thousand were injured.
So
almost 300 people were taken hostage.
Yes, and not all the hostages are back yet. They're still holding plenty of them. So I remind them once again, you are the prime minister. Remember, 5,000 small attacks, this major attack that you were totally unaware was coming. You're the prime minister. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to stop these attacks from happening? Not one of them ever got back to me. As soon as I write that, nobody answers that. Because the only answer is what Israel is doing now, except on a much greater, more powerful scale. I feel sorry for Netanyahu, like Tom Hagen in The Godfather, when Michael kicks him out and he says, "You're not a wartime consigliere." Benjamin Netanyahu is not a wartime leader. And he's weak. He was always nowhere near as strong as Chaim and I would like him to be. But now he's older. His testosterone is down. His focus is different. He probably has ulcers or who knows what at his age. And he's not the man to lead Israel in wartime. You need a Kahanis to lead Israel, to do what has to be done and get it over with quickly. The longer it goes on, the more the world hates you. The world wants Jews they can pity. They don't want Jews who fight back. So anytime you fight back, it's got to be quick, over and done with. Do you have anything to add to that, or did I nail it?
No, I would. The only thing I would add is what our beloved leader, Morenu V'Rabbeinu Harab Meir Kahana Zatzal, used to say. Rabbi Meir Kahana, our beloved leader of blessed memory, he used to say, when they're all condemning us, that's a good sign. That means we did something right. That means we're winning. They're frustrated. They're angry. They're condemning us. When they're praising us, that's a very bad sign, because that means we've been murdered and massacred. That's when they praise. When there's 6 million Jews, they'll have a moment of silence to remember the Holocaust. They'll build a Holocaust museum for the 6 million Jews that were murdered. When we're slaughtered and murdered, then the anti-Semites praise us. But when we're winning, they're all hysterical in the media and everybody all condemning and all. That's good. That means we're winning. That means we're frustrating them. That's a good sign. That's not something to be upset about. That's something to be happy about. And Rabbi Kahana always said, I would rather have a strong Israel that the world hates than an Auschwitz that the world loves.
In Israel, there's a Palestinian Museum. And it's when you have to knock on the door. When you come in, there's a Lubavitcher Jewish man there. That's the guys with the black hats with the big brim, and they don't have what's called payas, the curly hair down here. And they are usually very patriotic. So he welcomes you to the museum, the Palestinian Museum. And the first thing you see is the Palestinian flag. And then he thanks you for coming, because that's the extent of their history, the flag, because they have no history like some other groups.
They don't have a Palestinian History Month like we have in America for certain groups?
They're trying to push a Jewish History Month. And you should see how many right-wing Christians on my Facebook page said, yeah, that would be a good idea. And I went and said, no, that's a horrible idea. I said, if you need a month to show your accomplishments, it means you don't have any. And it means the world is trying to boost you up because they don't think you've done anything.
Not just that, who are they gonna they're gonna have you ever seen the Jewish history books from the self-hating Jews? Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That's who they think are people that accomplish something.
And that's who would be there for the Jewish History Month. I put it's a terrible idea.
Right.
We don't need any boosting up. We've accomplished things on our own.
Right.
Okay, if you want to know where America is, this passed me by for years. I've noticed it, but I never brought it up on any of our shows. If you want to know where America is right now, all you have to do is, well, first listen to the music, if you can call it. It's noise pollution. And now at my gym, you can request songs in the morning before you go there online, and they play it. And of course, the older people who want much better music don't know how to do that. So the young people do it, and the music went from what's called soft rock. I don't listen to that. As you can see, I am lost in the 50s. I don't know if it shows, but all my shirts say lost in the 50s, but the picture is different of a different 50s singer. Back in the 50s, you had miraculous voices like Joe Stafford, Patti Page, Eddie Fisher, who was a louse, but you can't deny his voice, Guy Mitchell. And you had groups like the Four Lads, the Four Aces, the Four Coins, the Four Preps. Remember 26 miles to Santa Catalina? Well, one of the Four Preps lives about 3-4 blocks down from me that way. And he plays table tennis, so I am always replacing the rubber on his racket. Anytime I meet him in the supermarket, I always say to him, sir, how far is it to Santa Catalina? And he goes, I think it's 26 miles. He was also one of the Diamonds who recorded Little Darlin'. Everybody remembers that because it's one of the signature songs of the 50s. A little darling, bope, 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 she what? Oh, where are you? Well, the music, of course, tells you where your country's at. Notice the greatest generation had the greatest pop music ever recorded. The big band sound, the swing music, with great singers, Helen Forrest, Frank Sinatra before his vocal hemorrhages, the Pied Pipers, the Modernaires, Harry Babbitt with Kate Kaiser. Kate Kaiser had a personality. He was actually starred in a few movies because he had a tremendous personality. Guys like Glenn Miller and the Dorsey brothers, their personality was like wood. But another way of telling, and this is the one that slipped by me, is boxing. You watch boxing and you look at the weigh-in and they stare each other down face to face, trying to intimidate the other one. Once in a while, one will push the other, and then the other one will come back and everybody's to jump in and break it up. Back when I was a kid, back in the 50s, when you had Floyd Patterson was the champion and Ingemar Johansson from Sweden was the challenger, these were gentlemen. They shook hands, they smiled at each other, and if they knocked you out, they went over to make sure you're all right. You don't see that today. People come in with ridiculous costumes, They're carried out if they win. It's supposed to be a sport, a gentleman's sport, the manly art of self-defense. And it used to rely on skill and power. Now it's mostly intimidation. And another thing you don't see anymore because of our culture, the way it is. Chaim will remember this, the World's Fair. Can you imagine having a World's Fair today with young thugs running wild all over, ripping people off, mugging them, maybe even dragging a woman into the bushes and doing something much worse than just mugging them, stealing things, breaking the exhibits? You can't have that today because there used to be a World's Fair approximately every 25 years, and we haven't had one since the 64 World's Fair because of the culture changes. And if you remember Joe Biden with his Lincoln Riley, who had her head bashed in by an illegal alien, he didn't even know her name. It's Laken Riley, a young woman with her whole future ahead of her, a whole life ahead of her, and a man who wasn't supposed to be here bashed her head in and killed her. Besides, she's dead. What about the family that has to live with this the rest of their lives? If any time the government should be sued, it would be because the government broke its own laws and somebody paid the ultimate price for it. So the family should sue the government. They should find a way, because theoretically or legally, you're not supposed to sue the government. Whatever they do is considered above legal action. So they got to find a way to sue the government and make them pay for this.
By the way, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are responsible for the murder.
Yes, that's what I meant suing.
But when people are murdered, he brings it up. He tried to fight back against the criticism when he was doing his State of the Union. But he was, and even that, he screwed the name up. He just can't. He's just incapable. I mean, he's just incapable. No matter how much they drug him, they give him stimulants. I'm sure they're giving him stimulants to wake him up before he gives a speech, because he has no energy. He falls all over the place. He's like in a daze all the time. I think they give him stimulants before he gives a speech to pump him up. But he's incapable of getting it right. And he's the one. He and Kamala Harris and the Democrats, and Republicans who support an open border, they're the ones who murdered that girl.
And she's not the only one. The illegal aliens, because I know the left hates that. And what if they didn't come here legally, so they're illegal. And they're aliens because they're not citizens. They belong to other countries. Well, the illegal aliens are now doing what some of our young men are doing. They're destroying stores, taking whatever they want. In some cities, you can steal in the area, depending on the city, $1,000 worth of merchandise, and it's only a misdemeanor. It's not a crime. So Rite Aid is closing up all 24 stores and leaving New York. Walmart is closing a few stores around the country, not because sales are poor, it's because thievery is high and you can't make a living. These are not nonprofit organizations. They're there to make a living. They're there to make a profit, and they have board of directors and stockholders they have to answer to. So if nobody's going to do anything about the crime, they pack up and leave. So that where do the residents who maybe don't say anything and don't point out and don't look inward to see what's causing this, but who are actually good people, they'll go to church on Sunday and they'll lead decent lives, where do they go to shop? Where do they go to get their prescriptions if all the drugstores are gone? And California is the same thing. Stores are closing up and leaving. You walk through Berkeley or San Francisco, and it's just empty store after empty store. And the government comes in and puts pictures of people having a good time on the glass. So you don't see that. You have to look twice to see that this is an unoccupied, empty store. Okay, we certainly don't want oil from the Middle East, but I warned you, electric vehicles are not the answer, and the bottom has fallen out of the electric car market. Tesla's in trouble. Their stock is down tremendously. General Motors is only going to make electric vehicles in their most expensive cars, Cadillac. Ford can't make electric vehicles anymore. Toyota said they're not. Toyota's coming out with a new engine that runs on ammonia. So I don't know how that's going to work. What if you get into an accident? Is something going to blow up? Meanwhile, Honda is working on hydrogen fuel cells, and they foolishly want to go into a partnership with General Motors. The quality control between the two companies is like day and night. I remember when in the late 80s, they wanted to bring back the Chevy Nova, and Toyota went into partnership with General Motors to do it. Toyota uses the blade on the sheet metal cutting machines, 5 cuts, and the blade has to be replaced. General Motors kept using their blades, until the edges on the sheet metal were ragged. And Toyota said, no, 5 cuts and you replace the blade. General Motors, do you ever notice on your side windows, there's rubber strips going around all sides so that rainwater doesn't get in there? And you don't see the edge of the glass. Toyota said the glass must be perfect. General Motors said they didn't care if there were chips in the glass because nobody sees it. And that's your difference between a Japanese car and an American car. Plus, every seam on a Japanese car is perfectly the same diameter, no matter where it is on the car. It's perfect, because anything less than perfect, and these guys would go home and commit harikari, because you bring dishonor to family and to company. So they make sure everything is perfect, and everything is tested in Japan for a few years before they allow it on the world market. So it's good that Honda wants to make a hydrogen fuel cell, but to go and partner with General Motors, Honda's going to have to be the senior partner with quality control, because you can't trust General Motors. My own car, I have a 2010 Toyota, and I wanted to buy a new one quite a few years ago, but I have the V6, which was optional. I have the Toyota RAV4, and mine was built in Japan. If you get run flat tires, the odds are your car was built in Japan, because they love run flat tires in Japan. And I've never had a flat. So my car is 2010. It has about 175,000 miles. I had, besides things that wear out, like brakes and batteries go over time, tires. The only problem I had out of 175,000 miles, and I got this at 131,000 miles, was my car, the motherboard for the air conditioning started malfunctioning. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. That was after 131,000 miles of no problems, and I haven't had another problem since. So you can't get a car like that built in America. They just don't make them like that. You can't even get a Japanese car built in America. Even all the reviews are the Japanese cars built in America are great, but they're still not as good as the cars built in Japan. So you want to look on the sticker on the door, or the vehicle number will tell you where, also known as a VIN, will tell you where the car was built. Because the bottom is falling out of EVs, electric vehicles, it's taking the rest of the car industry with it. Cars are just not selling, and the dealers' lots are piling up. And you might be able to get some really good deals because the cars are not selling. Another reason cars are not selling is most people can't come in and plunk down 45,000 in cash, or 50,000. They buy the car on time and they have to finance it. And of course, with interest rates so high, the financing, the monthly payments you're either going to have much higher payments, or instead of a 3-year loan, you'll have to take out a 5-year loan and then you pay tremendous interest to keep your payments down to a reasonable level. And of course, that makes people say, well, maybe not this year, I'll wait till next year. And that's what I'm doing. I want a Toyota RAV4 with a V6, but they stopped making it in 2012. That was the last year.
Can I just interject, ask something, well, maybe it's a rhetorical question. Let's say that there are problems with electric vehicles, and there are, because it's a new technology. There are some problems with it in some cases, but there are problems also with the other types of cars. And by the way, electric vehicles are still selling. Other cars, the car industry in general is in trouble. What are we gaining by putting down something that will reduce American dependence on Muslim oil, on oil from Muslim terrorist countries? What are we gaining by putting this down? Why, if there are problems with it, we should overcome the problems. But what are we gaining by putting this down? This is something that would be beneficial to America.
Yes, but the cars are on average 20,000 more than their gasoline counterparts. Then on top of that, sometimes they just catch on fire for no reason. I'm going to tell you a little story about one of my table tennis players. And then sometimes the engine goes dead while you're driving it. Sometimes the doors lock and you can't get out. Sometimes you're outside, the doors lock, you can't get in. Sometimes you can't even get the gas cap open because that's electric too. Because I'm not the gas, I'm thinking of hybrids. But when you're, the hybrids now are plug-in, and you can go about 45 miles on pure battery, and then you plug it in. On a 110 circuit, it takes about 11 hours to charge that small to medium-sized battery, but on a 220, you can charge your car in an hour and go another 45 miles without using any gasoline. But then if you go past 45 miles, you're in hybrid mode. So your first 25 miles an hour is still on battery. And then anything above 25 miles an hour, your gas engine kicks in. So hybrids seem to be the intermediate step before we see these ammonia engines or hydrogen fuel cell engines. And one of my table tennis just bought a RAV4 hybrid plug-in.
I think we're going to see electric vehicles as well. I think that the technology is going to improve, and people will be driving it eventually. And I think to put it down when it would be beneficial is a mistake. And I think I think the reason they're more expensive is because you save money. You don't have to fill up with the unbelievably expensive gas prices that we have.
No, but then if your batteries go, it costs you close to 30,000 in a car and 60,000 in a pickup truck to replace the batteries.
Yeah, but the things you're describing don't happen in the vast majority of cases, and the things you're describing are problems that also, I mean, there are problems that also exist with all vehicles, with all cars. There are many problems with all types of cars. No, not you. Okay, fine, but there are other people. There are other people who have electric vehicles who could also say, "Not mine." I mean, things happen. Things happen. I mean, it's just it's a new technology, but I don't think we're gaining anything by putting it down. I mean, if the technology, we should be rooting for every possible technology that eliminates Islamic Muslim
I
oil.
would be all for it if this was safe. But a lot of these cars are so poorly made, and they're not selling. The dealers are saying, don't to the manufacturers, don't send us any more EVs. The EV is over, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm waiting for Toyota's.
It's not true in every region of the country.
Even
That's
Chinese.
true. That's true where you are, but it's not true. There are many areas of the country. Unfortunately, they're the left wing areas more. The more that's where they are still selling. There are areas where they're selling and selling well. I mean, it's not true in every area of the country. It's just not true. I mean, there are places where it's selling, and I know people, by the way, including one person who was with JTF for quite a while, who bought a long time ago an electric vehicle. I mean, we know that little electric cars work, right? So, we know that the concept exists. There is a concept that exists. The question is, and by the way, we do know how to make electric vehicles that will run for long distances and that will not experience any of these problems. We do know how to do that right now, but it's very expensive. That doing to make the perfect electric vehicle, which we do know how to make. We know how to make it right now. We have the technology, but it's very.
There's one guy that came
The
out with a
question is,
battery.
no, the question is, how do you bring down the costs so that it's sellable? That's the question. It's because it's expensive now, but it's, the technology exists. It's like shale oil. In the 70s, when Rabbi Kahana, JDL, and we were all saying that we should produce more shale, they were saying, "Oh, it's too expensive. It'll never work. It'll never." And drilling and the drilling that we advocated that takes place now. A lot of the drilling had prohibitive costs, but eventually the technology was discovered to do it properly. That technology exists. So, eventually there'll be technology that will make electric vehicles and people will say, wow, why didn't we do this a long time ago? Eventually that's going to happen because the technology exists. The question is, how do you bring down the costs? That's the problem.
And how do you make it safe? You don't want to be driving and have the car burst into flames.
No, they
Also,
know how to make it. They know how to make it safe now, but the technology, again, it's more expensive. Then you pay much more, and people are not willing to pay much more. That's the issue. How do you make it price competitive, and at the same time have the technology that you want? That's the problem. That really is the problem. But anyway, go ahead.
somebody came out with a battery that will let you drive back and forth cross country 12 times. Where is it?
That's probably too expensive. It's probably too expensive to produce.
Well, whatever and also it charges in an hour, and you can drive back and forth 12 times.
If we could go to the moon in 1969, you don't think we could produce an electric vehicle that runs properly? Of course we can. Of course we can. The technology already exists and has existed for decades. The problem is we don't have, it's too expensive. That's the problem. Okay, but anyway, go ahead.
Letitia James, who claimed she didn't go after Donald Trump because she didn't campaign on it. She didn't say anything about it. She just went after him because he broke the law. She can't say what law because every investor that just left New York said, this is how business is done. The judge, Letitia James, said, well, Letitia James, for some reason, was invited to the fireman promotion ceremony, where I guess they were promoted to lieutenants and captains and chiefs. And she's walking on the stage and they boo and they boo and they boo. There's a few applause and they boo her. And then she starts to speak and you hear Trump, 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 Trump. Well, after that, I guess she felt kind of embarrassed. She said, and this is a quote, "We are going to hunt you down." The last time I heard a government hunting you down was 1939 in Nazi Germany. What does she mean they're going to hunt you down? Do these people have free speech rights or not? And these are union members. If they want, they can all walk off if she actually comes after them. I would stand firm and make her as irrelevant as possible. The only problem is the fire commissioner in New York City is a woman with no fire experience. She was never a fireman. She never put out a fire. And they made her commissioner because of her sex, not because she was the most qualified. And she's going to assist Letitia James in hunting these firemen down for doing what they did.
It's amazing when the Arab Muslim Nazis and their supporters, the Hamas supporters, heckle everybody, including the President of the United States, including even senile Joe Biden, they heckled. Nobody hunts them down. They're allowed to do anything they want. They riot, they rampage, they do everything else. The firefighters, and by the way, she of course was at a ceremony where they're trying to promote firefighters from groups. I'm not going to say which groups, but there were groups of people that they want to promote on the fire department, and this who are more used to setting fires, who come from people that are more used to setting fires than putting them out. But anyway, Letitia James, there's no question that her and her twin sister, Fannie Willis, the two of them, obsessively went after Donald Trump. And, I mean, it's amazing it's just it's the corruption and the lying and the deceit that goes on. It's just unbelievable. Has anybody, by the way, has anybody put Fannie Willis on trial? She
In
lied.
Georgia, and just today, the judge dropped 6 of the charges for obvious reasons.
The fact that he was charged at all, considering what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all these other corrupt, thieving traitors have done all these years, it's the whole thing. The whole thing is so obviously one-sided and obscene. If there's not equal justice under the law, that means we don't have any laws.
Right, and we don't have equal justice, so we don't have law, which is why you can go into the store and steal and nothing happens to you.
I'll bet you if I went into a store to steal, I'll bet you they would arrest.
Yes.
Me, they would go after to the full extent of the law. And by the way, when you say steal, of course, I'm not a crook. I wouldn't go in and do that to stores. But let's say there's a store that's evil, that's really evil, that represents evil. I might want to go in just to, maybe I'd want to go in just because I just want to sabotage the evil store and take stuff out. No, just take stuff out like they do in all these other stores. You think they'd allow me to do that if I went to in an evil store, a politically correct evil store? Like they have the, I can't even think of it now, but they have so many anti-Israel, anti-Semitic companies that I would love to take their merchandise and I wouldn't keep it, the merchandise, because their merchandise is crap. I would just throw it on the street. But do you think they would allow me to do that? Anyway, there's a double standard and there are no laws. If I don't put the proper colors on my garbage in New York City, 7 different colors you have for the garbage. This has to be in a purple bag. This has to be in orange. This has to be in this. You have to buy 7 different colors of bags you have to purchase just to put your garbage out. And we're paying the highest taxes in the damn country. And if I put do you know what they'll fine me to the hilt if I dare to put it in the wrong color garbage can, in the wrong color garbage bag. That you can't do. But if you want to, but I mean, this is just beyond belief. Donald Trump is not allowed to estimate what his buildings are worth. He estimated what his building, which I assure you, 90% of the people in the real estate business overestimate their properties in order to get loans, they overestimate.
Yeah, but the bank is not going to hand you the money because you say. They send a specialist out to get the actual, what the market value is. And the judge in the Letitia James against Trump, he said Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million. It's 67,000 square feet. A house very close by, which was half the size, is valued at $220 million. That's how valuable it is. Where does a judge come to say, he's not an expert in real estate. Where does a judge come to say your house is only worth 18 million when other properties are 220 million, 240 million, all in the same area?
Letitia James, okay, first of all, she can't even count. How does she know to estimate the prices of real estate? She can't even count. She's a moron.
Out of a complete
moron. And Fannie Willis is a moron. Did you see Fannie Willis taking the stand in a case and going like this to the person she was sleeping with and hired because she was sleeping with him to go after Trump? I mean, this is beyond belief. Can you imagine if somebody did this, let's say to Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson or Barack Hussein Osama or Michelle Obama? Somebody did this to Michelle Obama. Can you imagine the reaction that would be if they tried to pull this against somebody like that? Donald Trump, a $500 million fine, $500 million. By the way, never in the history of the state of New York has any individual been fined anything even close. Not even close. Not even a fraction of $500 million. This is unprecedented. And because he allegedly overestimated his real estate holdings, which the bank didn't care. The bank sent assessors anyway. They sent their assessors anyway, and they said, "No, yeah, we're going to give you the loan." Good. And they made money on it. Everybody made money on this. The banks made money. The taxpayers made money because he paid capital gains. Everybody made money on these on what he's been charged with. And he's getting a half $1 billion fine. There are no laws in this country anymore.
Well, businesses are, quite a few are packing up and leaving New York. It's not a place, as one real estate investor who was quick to defend Trump, he said, this is how business is done. This is how real estate business is done. And that an appraiser will come out and give you the true value of the property. He came right out and said that, but he said he's leaving. He said, New York, like California, is a loser state. It's no state to do business in. So right away, Governor Hochul came out and said, she slipped. She said, this was just for Trump. This doesn't involve all you others. But 4 major real estate investors have left New York City, Ben, because of this. So New York is paying the price. I hope Trump doesn't have to pay the price. That fine is ridiculous.
By the way, I hate to say this, but I agree with Governor Hochul. This is only against Trump.
It is.
They're not going to, these real estate guys, they're not going to go after they don't go after billionaires in New York. They never do. They never touch them. The billionaires can do anything. Revenue. Yeah, the billionaires can do anything they want. They run the city of New York, these billionaires. And this was only against Trump. And Governor Hochul told the truth. And by the way, Letitia James also said she said they have nothing to worry about. So she hinted at the same thing. In other words, we're only doing this against Trump. Don't worry. This is just against him. Yeah. And by the way, if he wasn't running for president, do you think there would have been a case against him? Are you kidding me? Of course not.
No, with all the good he did, he built the Woolman rink, all the people he gives jobs to in his buildings. He's actually, as a businessman, he was good for New York. And look at how they come down on him because they don't believe they can beat him. And he's not my man for president, but I'm dying to see him get in because I want to see if the left explodes and there's a revolution.
Joe Biden tells the dictator of China, take care of my boy. And then the dictator of China makes sure that Joe Biden's son gets millions of dollars in bribe money. That's not even being touched, not even being investigated, nothing. Nothing. You think America is a country of laws? Are you kidding me? People should vote for Trump just to be against, also to protest against that. Because if they do it to Trump today, they could do it to you tomorrow.
Plus the truckers, and I'm surprised they did get, I think, 22% boycotting, but it shows the other 78%. What do they stand for nothing? You can't say, well, they're union people, they support Democrats. That's from a school from decades ago, because union people are usually conservative, tough people. They're usually laborers, not people sitting in an office with a white shirt and tie on. They're tough people, and they don't like the Democrat Party anymore for the most part. And I'm surprised that the truckers couldn't get 80-85% support to stay out of New York. But as I've mentioned many times on our program and on my Facebook page, Americans stand for nothing anymore. All they want to do is come home to their creature comforts, put football on, have a pizza, and dribble beer all over their chin. And that's America today.
If the Hilltop Youth win and set an example, maybe you'll have Hilltop Youth on the American-Mexican border, and maybe that will reignite American idealism. You never know.
Well, I had one more topic, but I promised I would tell about the motion picture code a few weeks ago. I'll save it for next week because we're running late.
Is it a long topic?
No, you want me to do it?
Just a few minutes? Yeah, go ahead.
The film industry, mostly run by Jews, patriotic Jews in those days. They were Hollywood moguls. And even as late as 1960, Samuel Goldwyn said America must not be shown in a bad light at any time. because our films go all around the world. Even Hitler used to watch our films. He loved cowboys and Indians because he loved to see the cowboys kill the Indians. Well, the motion picture code came about in 1934 because in theory, the studios were supposed to be monitoring and censoring their own pictures, but they let anything go. If you look at 42nd Street, some of the scenes near the end, which are totally mild by today's standards, that would never have passed the motion picture code of 34, which was mostly from a Catholic league. If you look at Gold Diggers of 1933, it starts off with Ginger Rogers standing behind a round desk that looked like a coin, singing "Where in the Money?" And of course, she's wearing something, but you can't see it. From what you see of her, she looks like she's totally naked, along with all the other girls doing the same song. Well, the motion picture code finally got some teeth in 1934, and I don't know if it's a good thing. If you remember Betty Boop, we used to wear the real short dresses and wear a garter belt, and some of her stuff was very risque. And that's from Max Fleischer Studios, but not just Max Fleischer, even Disney artists, and of course Looney Tunes. If there was a person there and it was 24 frames per second when they drew, because that's how many frames when you watch a film, it's 24 frames per second. So when they drew the art and the cartoon, it was 24 frames. If there was a woman in it, in one of those frames, in the entire cartoon, one frame, she'd be totally naked. And you wouldn't see it because it goes by so fast, but it leaves an impression in your brain thinking, did I just, what was that? So it was pretty risque for that time. So the motion picture code came along and said, no more of that. That killed off Betty Boop. They had to make her a spinster with short sleeve, long dresses, and she had a little dog, Pudgy, and she fell out of favor really quickly because of that. And if you look at Gold Diggers of 1935 or 37, you won't see what you saw in Gold Diggers of 1933. And I just saved 42nd Street. I'm going to watch it again probably this weekend. You won't see anything like that after the motion picture code. Also, America had to be shown in a good light. Also, cowboys, when they're in a gunfight, to see who's the quickest draw. You couldn't have both guys in the same frame. It would cut to one guy who shoots, and then it cuts to the other guy who falls. They couldn't be in the same frame. Now, when the 50s came along, the public was demanding more realism. So the motion picture code started getting weaker and weaker and weaker. But then, the film that broke the motion picture code completely? They made Westerns over in Italy. Sergio Leone with Clint Eastwood, A Fistful of Dollars was the first one. Early in the movie, he walks down to the corral and he guns 4 guys down, all in the same frame. Sergio Leone was Italian. He didn't know about a motion picture code and that rule here where they have to be in separate frames. And that's what destroyed the end of the motion picture code. And of course, all the Clint Eastwood movies. He would even shoot a guy that was already shot, who was on his knees going, oh, and Clint Eastwood would put one more into him because Clint Eastwood in those days played the anti-hero who was almost as bad as the bad guys. But that was the end of the motion picture code. It was very stultifying. It was very static, and it made the pictures, the movies, very family oriented. And that's all I have to say.
I think it was fantastic. I think it was great. I think there should be. I think
movies
there
should be family oriented.
Absolutely, there
But for the
absolutely
time,
should be.
What they showed before the motion picture code. Oh, in Intolerance, 1915, in the Babylon scene, it was a war, and you see the guy whoosh, off right in the neck, and the guy's head would fall off. And they show this many times in the battle. Arms would be chopped off, and you'd see the whole thing. And you couldn't do that with the motion picture code. Not that I want to see that. I like The Lone Ranger, where they use bloodless bullets. He's shot in the shoulder, doesn't even make a hole in his shirt. There's no blood. They take the bullet out, and he's fine 20 minutes later. So that's what I want to see. I don't like these bloody bashy movies.
I agree. I agree. I think we certainly need a motion picture code. We need to boycott evil people, and Hollywood should be boycotted. The left-wing news media should be boycotted, and phony right media like the Wall Street Nazi Journal should be boycotted. When people do evil things, they should be boycotted. The left does this all the time, but people on the right don't do it, and that's one of the great weaknesses of the right. That should be corrected. That's something we've been advocating for a long time. In your heart, you know we're right, and in your guts, you know they're nuts. For JTF until next week, and for David Ben Moshe, this is Chaim Ben Pesach. Shalom.